Now, I do have to point out, I have been to Austin. I may have a British accent now. I'll go into that in a little bit in a second. My Salesforce shirt is in England still. That hasn't made it over yet as I've moved over. But I did have the chance to attend Texas Dreamin' back in 2018. It's such a great conference. I recognize many familiar faces on the call. I just wish that I couldn't be wearing. I really wish I could be wearing my Salesforce shirt today, but that isn't the case, sadly. Now, a quick little bit about myself. I'm new to the developer evangelist team, so some of you may have known me in my previous roles as a customer, but despite my accent, I was actually born and raised in California, of all places, who happily met my husband and moved to the UK in 2013, and then decided, hey, I might as well give America another chance, and now living in Las Vegas. So for everyone in the US, I'm now going to be speaking a lot around Salesforce, the development experience, spend to you about development, about data protection, privacy, and security. So you will always see me talking about security, the GDPR, privacy, all the new privacy features in all of my content. And there's always sort of a little privacy strand. So please check that out. And I'll definitely be talking about some of that today. And last thing I need you to know about me is that I love to work. Like if I could be writing code 24 hours a day and not like having dinner, not spending time with my family, not watching TV, I'd be sitting there working and doing all of this. But I just always want to bring up to be mindful of burnout and understanding that as much as we love working, as much as we love Salesforce, to take that time out for yourself and to be mindful as well, because that causes a better working experience for you and creates such a better quality of work in life. Now, I have to say a huge thank you to everyone who's attending this meeting. There are so many of you on today. I was lucky enough to have been a user group leader in the past as well. And all we do when putting all of this time and effort into planning the events is hoping that people come and show up to these meetings. And I think it's been so great to see so many people registered for the event, so many people attending the event, that hopefully you get a lot out of today. Now, on to the topic at hand. We're here to talk about TrailheadDX this year. I'd love to know how many people in the room have had the chance to attend TrailheadDX in person prior to this year, but I thought it was really cool to see that developer experience in that conference brought online for us. TrailheadDX was started a few years ago now, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and sort of bringing developers together with product managers and product teams to really talk about that developer experience on Salesforce, talk about building apps on platform. And it was so successful that it was expanded to not only focus on developers, but to look at everyone within the community, from admins to architects to people who are focused on that community, that ecosystem. And it's created such a cool in-person experience that we then were challenged to bring digitally to you. And if you weren't able to attend in person, the way that the day was set out was as if you were watching a television program and you had channels that you could flip through with all kinds of really cool content that focused around those 4 really sections around developers, admins, architects, and the community and the ecosystem. I personally had a session in the architect track, obviously about data protection and privacy, but I found myself so enthralled throughout the day, even after my session, going through and watching the different channels to see the content that was being produced. And it created a really unique conference experience for anyone attending. On one of the earlier global gatherings that I was presenting at, someone said that their favorite part of having TrailheadDX online was if they ended up in a room where they didn't relate to the content, they could just change the channel. Whereas if this was an in-person conference, you'd actually have to sit there in that session, maybe not wanting to stand up in the middle of everyone and leave, and you could really find that content that was tailored to you. Now, my second favorite part of TrailheadDX that you might not all know about are the demos. So we wanted to recreate that community expo experience, and we got together with a lot of our product teams to create specific demos for a lot of the new products and features that you can go and browse on demand. Now, I just wanted to point that out as a web page, that we have all of those demos posted here for you to access on the TrailheadDX website, for applications like Salesforce Anywhere, where you can go in and watch that product team give a really awesome demo of that product and get an insight into all of these new announcements and features. And coming straight from the product teams, I think is very valuable to have. So go, if you see anything that I'm talking about today that you're really excited by, check out these demos, get to know the product teams, and I think it'll be really useful for you to do and go and check that out. I find myself, if I ever have a question about any of these, my first port of call at the moment is to go and check out the demos and see what we talked about, how we're portraying that product, and some of the cool features that it offers. Now, going back into TrailheadDX, I want to talk about initially the 3 key product announcements that happened at the conference, and then some of the cooler stuff that you might have missed browsing the channels and checking out that content. And the first of those is going to be the DevOps Center, which is really going to bring a new light onto the way that we deploy and develop within Salesforce. And we're going to talk about that first. We're then going to go through Code Builder and the way that Code Builder brings that really great developer experience on your machines into your browser. And then lastly, we're going to cover Salesforce Functions and what I find to be one of the most powerful new Salesforce features that we've seen in a really long time. Now, as I said, first on to the DevOps Center. I'm sure a lot of us have explored continuous integration process. A lot of us are, I'm sure, used to change sets, maybe have gotten ourselves familiar with Salesforce DX. I know we've got quite a mixed audience here, so we've got quite a few admins, we've got some developers, we have some architects. And so I want to really put a light on all of this content that we can all understand and all comprehend. And the DevOps Center, and in this case, the Release Management Hub, really puts a great and user-friendly interface on top of that deployment experience within Salesforce. And it has lots of really cool features that allow you to really track your project management, but like tracking your work items to specific metadata changes within Salesforce, allows you to integrate with version control and really create that centralized source of truth on platform. Now, a lot of this stuff you can do currently, but there is a lot of technical overhead that goes with it. A great example of a really cool continuous integration process with Salesforce are the sample apps on the Trailhead sample gallery. Now, I'm sure a lot of us have seen Dreamhouse in demos. We've seen e-bikes in demos, maybe downloaded those. But what you'd be really interested in knowing is that we develop those, and as developer evangelists, maintain those applications within GitHub. And you can go into the GitHub repos and you can see directly all of our workflow, how our continuous integration process works. And it's really cool, but it is very technical. And so this DevOps Center and the Release Management Hub are going to give you those types of capabilities, but within Salesforce, within a nice, clean user interface. I know this is something that I'm really excited for. The former consultant in me is really excited for this. And I think this is going to really bring admins and developers together when it comes to this deployment experience and really bring a new light to the way that we're doing things. The beta should be live at the end of the year, so please keep an eye out on the Salesforce Devs Twitter for announcements. And obviously within this community, we'll be able to hear about when that sign up is available. Now, the next part and next big release from TrailheadDX that I'd like to talk about is Code Builder. And I think this one was really out of left field. The amount of people that I saw that were totally surprised by this announcement really made it feel worthwhile, all the work that the teams have been putting into Code Builder. Now, if you're unfamiliar what Code Builder is, Code Builder takes the on-machine sort of development experience within VS Code that we're used to now and puts it into a browser and allows you to use your browser as your main development environment for Salesforce. Now, one of the things that I really like about this is that when I'm having to put together an org, download all the metadata on my machine, go in, verify the connection, and then constantly being pushing back and forth between my development environment and Salesforce, there's a lot of overhead there and there's a lot of work that goes into that. And when you're working across multiple environments, it becomes a time-consuming exercise. With Code Builder, I can just click a button and open up that development environment in my browser. It's already authenticated against my org. It already has my extensions in it. And then I can just download those metadata items as a need be. Think about that experience we have currently when opening up the developer console, but imagine that you could have all the power of VS Code on your desktops in that browser. Now, one of the things that I used to really like to do as a consultant and a developer on Salesforce was build Aura components that I could write in code and then give it to my admin who could then open them in the developer console and maybe modify some colors, maybe change some of the text within the component. Well, within Lightning Web Components, currently, there is no online editing environment. And as a lot of us have moved over to writing Lightning Web Components, we lose that seamlessness between handing over a component to an admin to modify. Now, with Code Builder, that breaks down those barriers, and then we can now write our Lightning Web Components in the browser and all take a look at that code ourselves. And I think it's just going to really change the way that we develop on Salesforce, especially when we're in multiple environments all the time. And it'll be really beneficial to consultants who are always having to configure these systems and the IDEs for their or for each of their clients. Now, another unintended benefit of Code Builder is for any of us in organizations that have to go through lots of approvals. As we were listening earlier, as we were on the call, someone was talking about unofficial SF and having to get approvals for using the tools within their organization. It's the same thing with things like using VS Code on your desktop. You have to go through an IT approval to download VS Code. You then have to go through an approval for the CLI. You then have an approval for all of the extensions. And then you might have Salesforce DX plugins that aren't officially signed, that may be community and source driven, that you'd have to download onto your machine and run. Well, with Code Builder, all of this exists in your browser. And so you're not actually having to bring any of this onto your desktop and worry about corporate policies, because when you're running in the browser, we know that it's secure behind that protected environment. And I think this will really give a lot more Salesforce users and customers and admins, developers, everyone really, the power to use these tools right in their browser and really change that development experience. And now the last aspect of this I want to talk about, which is generally very developer heavy, are Salesforce functions. Now, I'd actually like to take a step back from Salesforce functions for a second and talk about functions. I've done a lot of work with Lambda functions on AWS in particular. I'm sure other people may have used other functions platforms, but one thing that I like to do within functions is offload a lot of the heavy lifting that might be processing in Salesforce into a function that's a little container that does some really fast programming and processing of data. One example of that is image processing and manipulation. I like to take pictures that maybe have uploaded into Salesforce and fire them over to an API to do some processing. For example, if you want to take someone's profile picture, there are many different services that will process the images by maybe cropping around that person's face, blurring out the backgrounds, and using a function is a great way to call out from the Salesforce API to a function, do that really heavy processing and providing that back to Salesforce. And what makes Salesforce functions really cool is it takes that external call out that we're having to do to process the data and brings it right into Salesforce. That way you get that extra kick in your processing power on platform instead of having to make an API call out to go and process elsewhere. Another great example of a function is an app that I was building recently to take school data around properties for the Dreamhouse app and find the top 3 nearby schools within the area. Well, the file of nearby schools is much larger than the allowed Apex file size limit. And that way, because of that, I had to write an external API. I had to put that CSV onto an external API, call out from Salesforce to go and get that data, and then bring it back into Salesforce. And it took a lot of work and a lot of effort to do that. Well, with Salesforce functions, I don't have to worry about that file size limit in the same way as I do within Apex. And I could just call out to my Salesforce function, process the data, return the results without having to make that round trip transaction elsewhere. And I think it's going to really change the way that we think about running those really heavy processes on platform. And I can't wait for you to all to try it out. I will put the link in the chat afterwards, but there is a developer preview open currently. So please sign up for that if you're interested in functions, as I think it'd be great to get an eye and really get some of your feedback as that product starts to evolve. Now, I'm going to actually sneak in 2 more announcements that I'm really excited about that weren't part of those official announcements within TrailheadDX, but the first of those is Work.com. I'm sure you've heard of Work.com. It's an incredible platform that's been built by Salesforce to help businesses reopen safely and really ensure that there is almost assurance for their employees as they're starting to come back to work. But that's not actually what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the employee data model. And as part of Work.com, it's really ushered in the employee data model into your Salesforce orgs. If you all go into your Salesforce orgs now, you will see we've got these new objects within Salesforce for managing employee data. And they give you the opportunity to really bring those unique customer experiences to your employees. And I'm sure a lot of you may have ideas around apps that you can already start building around the employee data. Because back when I was a consultant, I can't tell you the number of orgs that I logged into that had like 3 different employee custom objects. Every employee custom object had a different name, different labels. And I think this really brings some uniformity to the way that we look and see employees within Salesforce, and will bring together a new light around how we're building those employee experiences. And the next one of those are the architecture decision guides that the Architect Evangelist team has rolled out recently. I think everyone needs to go to these architecture decision guides and bookmark them, and always have them handy to reference. There are 2 in particular that have been released currently, and the first one is the Architect's Guide to Building Forms that really goes through how to build forms on platform, whether that be through a record detail page, dynamic forms, maybe using a screen flow to build forms. I find forms are always one of the #1 asks of the business, like whether or not Salesforce has a forms package or some sort of capability. And I think this guide really gives you a direction when it comes to deciding which tool for which job when building those forms. Now, the one that I think will have the largest impact, though, is the Architect's Guide to Building Record-Triggered Automation. And I think this is super beneficial for everyone, admins, developers, architects, because it provides a backbone to those decisions that you're making when you're deciding what data to manipulate on Salesforce. At its core, within Salesforce is sort of record triggering and modification. Every time some sort of data is created, updated, deleted in Salesforce, we want to trigger an action. And this guide helps you determine whether workflow, automated flows, processes, triggers are the right tools for the job, and really goes into a deep analysis of batch sizes, what is capable when you should be doing what, and which tool you should be using. Now, a lot of us might already know this information, but what's important about this is that it's a great tool for us to share with each other. You may be working on a team full of admins and developers, and to have something that you can use as a reference and have communication and discussion, I think is really good and beneficial for everyone when it comes to making these decisions. So please go and check those out. The Architect Evangelist team has put a lot of work into them, and I really hope that you find them as beneficial as I do. So now that covers the announcements. When chatting and planning today's meeting, we talked about some of the TDX highlights that we think that would be beneficial for you to go and see. I have to point out that all of the sessions from TDX are online for you to go and watch. So please go and bookmark them. There's lots of really good information, and revisit them as much as you can. So you're really clued up about some of these tools. But what we wanted to do was talk about a few of these aspects and sessions, and point you to them and tell you why you should go and see them. And the first of those is around how to build intelligent applications for customers and employees. And the root of this is around Einstein. And what is really Einstein? As we sort of had the discussion around which sessions to push, the topic was brought up around, is Einstein a product? Is it a tool? What is it? And I like to categorize Einstein. If you ever see Salesforce referencing a product as Einstein, it's one of our platform services that has intelligence baked in by default. And so, for example, this session talks about 3 topics, the first of those being Einstein Prediction Builder, which helps you analyze large data sets and create predictions based off of that criteria that you set. For example, this session really goes into detail on whether or not a customer will renew, and building up your actual prediction builder within Salesforce to identify and make that decision based on whether a customer is expected to renew. It then goes through Next Best Action, which is a tool that we have on platform that allows you to make recommended actions to your users based on specific criteria within their org. So for example, if that customer is predicted to renew or to upgrade, then Einstein Next Best Action can help you determine which actions you want to show to your users based on that criteria. And then the last feature, one that I really love, are Einstein bots. I love Salesforce communities, and I think it's a great way to communicate with our customers. And Einstein bots really take that to the next level when it comes to those customer-facing communities. You can program out conversations and paths, just like if you were writing a flow, really, to almost guide your users through those discussions. I can't tell you how many times in the past, really 2 months since a lot of the world has gone digital, that I've been on a chatbot on a website and just really hoping that it was a Salesforce chatbot, because I knew that if that was the case, then there was a little bit of intelligence going into that programming and natural language processing into my questions. Now, to take that to the next level, you can even use Apex invocable actions. So if you want to do some really cool processing around that data, then you can bring that in as well. Now, the last point I have to say, it's not in the session, but something you should really check out about Einstein bots is there are lots of Einstein bots built by Salesforce Labs on the App Exchange. So if you want to check out some of the Einstein bots that have been pre-configured and free, they've all gone through security review, please go and check those out on the App Exchange, because it's a great way to get started with some of these features. But please go and check out this session. It's fantastic. And I really enjoyed watching this one.
Stephan,
now,
may I
yes,
ask you quickly, sorry,
yeah.
I want to interject because I know there's so many people here
Yes.
that have questions around bots specifically.
Okay.
So I work at Expedia,
Mm-hmm.
and being in the travel industry right now, of course.
Oh, yes.
Like,
oh, I'm sure.
Automation is key, and we're relying heavily on bots and automation.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that this is something that you've seen a lot of activity around, especially within the last couple of months. And
yeah.
Can you give some just personal examples or something that somebody could take on a more specific level?
Yeah, I've got a great one.
I know we have so much interest in this. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So one of my big ones that from a personal experience, one thing that I don't like about bots is when it tries to guess what I'm saying and gets it really wrong. And so I've just moved house, and part of that is switching my cable service and internet over. I went 5 days without internet. I did survive. It was difficult. Tensions were high, but it did survive that. And trying to work with that provider over the phone was impossible because we were looking at 2-hour wait times to get on the phone. So the next really medium is by going to their bot on their website. Last property and this property, and I typed in a message, hello, I have
We may be having some internet issues.
And it almost loosely used my language to try and process that. Oh, there's a little bit of irony there.
Yeah.
So sorry if you can hear me better now. So I was trying to understand why I was double billed, and I said I might have had the word cancel in my text, and the bot assumed that I wanted to cancel my service and was ready to start taking me through the prompts to just cancel my service. And that's because it was identifying keywords to try and track that instead of actually using natural language processing to track the intent or maybe understand that it was a billing issue. Now, another aspect of bots that I've been hands-on with is using invocable actions to go and gather context about that person within Salesforce. And so if you have someone who's logged into your community, you can actually write a query that might go and get you some of their key user permissions and things. So for example, being super privacy focused, I like to go and query for anyone's permissions before I then start trying to push them products, so that the person who's having the conversation on the other side, so once it's passed over to an agent, we're always aware of the context of that user and maybe any of their specific preferences as we're having that conversation. Now, unfortunately, that's not a solution to my cancellation problem, but just a hands-on example of bots. But like I said, go check out some of the ones on the App Exchange, because there have been some really great examples written to work with bots. Now, there was a group of people within the solution engineering part of the business recently who built a Lightning Web Component chat pack that has like 12 really cool Lightning Web Components for flows that you can use as like a date selector, different multi-pickers, image uploaders, all kinds of really cool Lightning Web Components that you can bring into your chatbots. They're all free, so go and check those out. And if you're a developer, all of the code for those is on GitHub. And so you can go in and look at how they were built and maybe build your own Lightning Web Components as well for those chatbots.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure
that helps everyone.
Appreciated that as well, because this is an area of interest, I know, at the moment.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I mean, from a technical perspective, to open up the Einstein bot builder and play with those, it's really easy to get started. Open up a Scratch org. I'll share a link in the chat afterwards, but you can enable bots in any of your Scratch orgs and you can go in, you can start building them and playing with them right away. You don't have to worry about talking to an AE. You don't have to worry about licenses. You can do it in a Scratch org. So I suggest everyone, if you've not played around with bots, they're really, really cool and really easy to get started with. Now, if any of you are familiar with Flow, it makes it even easier because you understand that branching logic and how that it works. But if you're not, the UI is super intuitive and can really help you get started with those. And I'll be sure to share that link once I finish presenting.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Now, the next session I wanted to point out was the Salesforce Analytics developer experience. And the reason that I wanted to point this out is one of the #1 questions that I've seen asked in the community over the last year is, okay, Tableau, Einstein Analytics, where do we meet in the middle? Where are we going to go? And this is a great session with Skip and Geraldine, who go through really a lot of those technical abilities between the two platforms and give you a lot of distinction. Now, I'm not an expert in Tableau, but I have done a lot of work in Einstein Analytics, and I can just say some of the new features of Einstein Analytics are game-changing for that platform. And whenever you're doing that type of heavy processing in Salesforce, I think it'll make a big difference. One aspect of Einstein Analytics that I've been a very heavy user of is the event monitoring analytics. So to be tracking your event monitoring data, I know I see Zach nodding his head. We had a little conversation about this before today's session. I said I wouldn't go into detail too much today because I could talk about it for hours, but please go ahead and check out this session. It gives you a really good look into the future of that tool and those capabilities. Now, off of product sessions, I just want to talk quickly about how amazing the Trailblazer community is and how amazing it's been to me in the past. This session is a great way of identifying the ways that you can get yourself involved with that community. But I thought here it'd be nice to share a little bit about myself. I attended my first user group back in 2014 in London. And from that day, I really started to fly. I got to know people who were really like me. I was really shy those first few user groups. And then eventually I had the opportunity to start my own user group and started bringing people into the fold. And it got to be so much so that I was talking about all of this GDPR and this general data protection regulation and privacy stuff back before anyone in Salesforce was talking about it. So I started an unofficial community group called the GDPR Superheroes. I think I got in a little bit of trouble because of that, because I received a cease and desist from the Salesforce security team around why I was doing this. Now, once we all got to know each other, they knew where I was coming from and verified my credentials. We were all good and really happy. And that's really actually what's led me working at Salesforce now, because I got to know that team so well and bring that together. And all from attending a user group back in the day. I mean, it's brought my network so much closer together, whether that be in person, when we were having in-person events, virtually, keeping in touch with everyone. There's so much out there for you to do within this community that can help level up your career, not only from a technical ability, but really looking at those soft and those communication skills. I can talk about myself as a hiring manager back when I was building development teams, was understanding how important those soft and communication skills are to a person. You can write the best code in the world and not have a conversation about that code and explain your justification for those decisions. And it makes it really hard to hire that person, because if they cannot communicate what they're doing, then they can't really hand it over. They can't really work together with a larger team. And I think the Trailblazer community, for one, has given me communication skills like the little shy person in me never had before. And it's really changed my career and brought me now to be at Salesforce, where I now get to go and talk to 8, 9 global gatherings and really get to know everyone on a personal level. One thing that I do want to point out is, do not forget about the community conferences, things like Texas Dream. And once that all starts to reemerge and start happening, whether that be virtually, maybe it be in sort of a Second Life or Animal Crossing, please get involved with those and support the people who are putting on those conferences, because they're another way to really level up those networking skills and your abilities. And any opportunity you can. I mean, I'm seeing some faces on here that I've seen in quite a few global gatherings recently. And I think it's great to just get on, socialize, and network for everyone, and a really good opportunity to connect. So once again, go ahead, check out this session. It's very beneficial. And now the last one is really around building your resume of the future and identifying what skills exist on that. And another part that played a huge part in my career is certifications and getting together with certification groups, studying, and really getting to know these domains when coming and getting the certifications. I know recently, since the incarnation of Trailhead Live, you can go onto Trailhead Live anytime and watch all kinds of really awesome on-demand certification prep content. We talk about that a little bit in this session. And every day, there are 2 or 3 sessions around certification prep that you can go through and learn around some of these core capabilities and domains. This is training that you might have had to pay for in the past from some of our top trainers within Salesforce. So go take advantage of that content and bookmark those sessions. I like to put at least 2 or 3 hours a day in my diary for watching Trailhead Live content, whether that be live or on demand. It's always there for you to watch, and it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is the JavaScript Developer 1 certification. I was super excited for the certification because I've done a lot of JavaScript development outside of Salesforce. And to go through and see everyone share on Twitter, them getting their certifications really shows how much work a lot of people have put into learning Lightning Web Components and really broadening their development skills outside of the Salesforce ecosystem. Because this is really the first certification that we've released that isn't Salesforce specific. These are everyday skills for building applications in JavaScript that you may have not known that you had, or skills that you may have not known that you've learned while working with Aura components and Lightning Web Components over the last few years. So go ahead, check out the session. It's fantastic. And while you're at it, check out every other session that was ran at TrailheadDX, because there's lots of really great content there that's super beneficial, a lot of it directly from the product managers, as I said. So please go and check that out. Now, we're going to sidetrack from TrailheadDX for a second. I mentioned Salesforce Labs earlier, but I thought that it'd be best to give a little demo that isn't sort of focused on just developers or admins, and talk about some of the Salesforce Labs apps that I've built. Now, earlier in my slide when I was talking about myself, I mentioned that I love work and will work at all hours of the day if I could. And my way of coping with the pandemic was by not stopping work. And so through that time, I worked with a buddy of mine to build 3 new Salesforce Labs apps that everyone can go onto the App Exchange and download now. The first of those is cookie consent for communities. So for any of us that are using communities, there's now an app for managing cookie consent. I will caveat that it can be difficult to configure because there are so many intricacies when it comes to working with cookies on communities, but always feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'll go through a little bit more detail about that in a second. The second of those is a multi-org security summary for anyone that has a multi-org implementation and wants to look at that multi-org security view of their orgs. And then lastly, the Lightning messaging utility, which we'll get to in my demo in just a second. But first, cookie consent is a great way for anyone that has to comply with cookie regulations, whether you're maybe a global customer of Salesforce, maybe you do business in California or a part of the world that requires cookies. This app will allow you to store your cookies on Salesforce and track unique visitors to your communities and show them a little cookie pop-up banner to gather their consent against those cookies, or maybe even a footer. Now, this component is just the Lightning Web Component and a few custom objects. So for anyone that wants to customize it past what's available, the source code is available on GitHub, and you can go ahead and configure this as much as you need for your business look and feel. I did try and make it as malleable as possible within the UI, but there's always that company that might want to take it to the next level. And because it's Salesforce Labs, it's all free, all the code is open source, so you can go and check that out. Now, the second of those apps that I'd like to talk about is the Multi-Org Security Summary. Now, Multi-Org Security Summary is an app that allows you to take your centralized security org, or an org that you designate as that hub, and take your security health checks from all of your different orgs within your environment, whether they be production orgs, sandboxes, any type of staging environments, and push those security health checks into a centralized tool for analyzing the data. And now, if you're not familiar with a security health check, it's a great tool within Salesforce that allows you to identify all of your security configuration and track back the status of those configuration settings based on industry standards. So if you have a score that is high risk, it's something that maybe you need to get with one of your admins and go in and change within the security setting and understand why that decision has been made. And this is really an app that lets you take control of that information in a single environment instead of having to look in all of your orgs and export that data to then view and analyze defined security vulnerabilities. And then lastly, one of my favorites is the Lightning messaging utility. Now, For those of us that might not be familiar with messaging within Salesforce, I'm not actually talking about messaging and communicating. I actually want to pop into the Lightning Design system for a second and explain to you what that means. And so if we go into the Lightning Design system here on the website, if you've not seen this before, the Lightning Design system really underpins the design and the user interface of Salesforce from a component level all the way down to the reason that certain text is placed in a certain area, or you have a column here and an open text area here. And there are a whole series of design guidelines that you can use to help you build and design components for Salesforce. Now, when we talk about messaging, we're talking about communicating with our users. And I'm sure you've seen all of these types of alerts around Salesforce. We might have little popover errors. We might have toast messages that pop up. We might have alerts that appear on the screen. All of these are messaging types that you can use within your components to give that user feedback around their action. And what the Lightning messaging utility does is it takes 4 of these types and makes them really easy for you to use either in the Lightning app builder or within your code. And so if we take a look at those within the slides here, the 4 types that we've included in the Lightning messaging utility are alerts. And so you can show your users alert banners, maybe when they're not supposed to be accessing something or when there's an error on the page. We can show them inline text errors when you want to bring attention to something. You can show them prompts when you'd like them to confirm upon page access, or you can show them illustrations when there's no data available. And these can be used by admins and developers alike. Now, I'm going to show you a page, and I have to warn you now that any of the Lightning Design System team would never want me to show you what I've done to this page because it's a monstrosity. But this page here in the Lightning App Builder shows you lots and lots of messaging components on a single page. For example, we have a prompt here that's showing me that there's scheduled maintenance when that page is first loaded. We have some different alerts here in different variants on the page. We have a number of different illustrations on the page, and then we have some info and inline text notifications here on the page. All of these have been configured in our Lightning App Builder, and we can modify them to our heart's content. You can put even more errors on the page. I wouldn't advise against I'd advise against it because your users start to ignore them after time. But these are all configurable within the tools and the utilities in the Lightning App Builder. You can choose whether or not we're showing the icons. You can specify the icons, the different variants, and really bring an experience to your users that's very seamless with that Salesforce design. Now, where this is very beneficial is in page context of your records. And now I'm going to use an example of someone who's opted out of email. If we go into this page, you can see here, I have an alert here that says this contact has opted out of email. Now, if I go into the Lightning App Builder here and edit this page, what we're doing is taking that email opt-out field and we're setting this alert banner as responsive based off of that field value. So if I click on this Lightning Web component here and go down to the bottom, you can see here that I've set that component visibility based on that email opt-out field. And I'm only showing that alert banner when that happens. Now, this isn't new. This is something that admins have been able to do for a long time, but they've been having to do it in rich text fields. And so I could create a rich text field that says this contact is opted out of email. I could make it bright red. I can throw some pictures in there, and it's great, but it doesn't necessarily fit within that design of Salesforce. Whereas now with this Lightning messaging utility, you can just drag the component onto the page. You can set the variants, the icons, the message, and create that really nice experience for your users, just like if you were a developer writing code to build out these components. Now, if I go ahead and change that type to inline, you can see here that that alert will change shape based on what I've selected in the configuration. And I think that this app will give us all a really uniform way of creating these alerts and error messages within Salesforce, not as just admins, but in developers. Now, all you have to do is reference this component instead of having to go and copy and paste that markup every time you're wanting to write an error. And I know personally, this has been my secret weapon for a long time, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity to take it and release it out to the world to really speed up the developer experience and create that consistency in the way that we're communicating messages to our users. And then the last thing I want to mention today is a little shout out. I've recently started a new Trailhead Live series called Behind the App. And Behind the App takes Salesforce Lab Solutions and their developers and brings them together in a 1-hour program that we're going to be running on the last Thursday of every month on Trailhead Live. and really give you insight into some of the technical challenges that internal Salesforce employees have as developers when building on platform. And it's really cool to see that we all have the same struggles and we all use that same approach to building applications and really taking a deep dive into the code. Now, the first episode we did was on the multi-org security summary, where we took that app and broke down some of those technical aspects of it. And that episode is live on demand now. I'll share the link in the chat once again afterwards as well. It's a great way for you to go and really see the way that some of the internal Salesforce developers think and get some insights into those apps as they're being built. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. I'm sure there are lots of questions pinging around the chat. We covered a lot today, but hopefully you found some benefit from that content. Thank you very much.
That was a really great presentation. There's a lot of things going on. Does anyone have any specific questions right now? If you want to drop them in the chat. So I'll drop them at once.
No questions, but while people, I'm sure, are asking questions in the chat, there's so much, Stephan, that you have knowledge about.
This was the abridged presentation.
No, you have so much knowledge, and we are lucky to have you on our panel tonight to speak to us and educate us on all the things that you are so knowledgeable about. So I'm excited to see what shows up in the chat. Nadina, are there questions that are coming in?
A lot of thank yous, and I think people are super content. I haven't seen any questions yet. Someone said that you released your open source secret weapon.
Yes, that's so my challenge to myself as a developer evangelist was to stop keeping my code secret, because I have like my GitHub contributions go from like 0 to like 5,000 when I joined as a developer evangelist, because I thought if I'm taking on this role, I need to start making every piece of code that I write open source. And so I'm not building against someone's org. I'm building tools for the community. And so you'll see on there, I've done quite a few Trailhead live sessions already. All the code's on GitHub. Any blogs that I've written for the developer.salesforce.com website, all the code is on GitHub. Go and check all of it out. It's there for you to use, learn. Please feedback and critique as well, because no one is a superstar 100% perfect developer, and we can all learn from each other. I think the Trailhead, the sample gallery, is the perfect example of that. We're constantly receiving feedback around some of the design decisions that we make, and improving those apps based on the community's feedback. So keep it coming, because it's super important for all of us.
On that note, I would say that one of the areas that I would think would be open source, especially for Salesforce in a very configurable way, would be GDPR.
Yes. So I do a Trailhead live session on that.
Okay. Because so, like I have being part of a large global, far-reaching with multi-org instances.
Yes.
GDPR is a beast, and it feels like there could be some sort of standard that Salesforce puts into place that can reach into AWS or whatever other Mongo databases or whatever you have, and why not make that like a solution that is like a kind of plug and play?
So on demand, let me pull up some content for you. Let me go ahead and just put this screen over, and let me get up another slide. So I do a session at TrailheadDX on data privacy and protection for architects. I have a Trailhead live session on data privacy and protection for developers, but I have something that I can throw on the screen right now for you. And what it is a lot of people might not be aware that Salesforce have released like 25 new standard objects for managing privacy and compliance. So number one, a lot of us have heard about that individual object. I should have it up on my screen in just a moment for you. Let's see, bear with me. Just grab that. So yeah, so while that's loading up, a lot of us might have heard of the individual object. And the individual object really is used to bring together all of those different personas that we have within Salesforce. And Now, when I talk about personas, it's a way that I like to describe people within Salesforce. So we have lots of different people and representations of people. We have contacts, we have leads, we have users, we have person accounts, and we now have employees. And all of these people may be that same person, that same identity, and the individual object, well, may take some work to initially implement, bring together all of those identities. And so if we look at this slide here, I kind of put that example of the individual as really being that hub of a person for all of the different roles that they play in Salesforce. So this person might have entered the system as a lead. That lead might have then converted into a contact. They may be a partner of ours, so they're a user. Or you may have employees, and all of these people relate back to that same identity. We then have, for example, a consent type that can then relate to someone. And so all of that consent, all of those opt-ins, all of those subscriptions relate to that individual and then roll up to the contact, the lead, the user, the person account, so that you're not tracking permissions separately for each of those personas. Just because I'm a lead and I'm opted in doesn't mean that if I'm a contact, I'm opted out. You can still contact my lead. I've opted out globally. There's not just sort of a give or take opt out. And so this really allows you to unify that approach. Now, if you check out this link here, sfdc.co/consent-erd, these are all of the new consent objects that have been rolled out into every single one of your orgs that you can use to create that unified consent model within your business. Now, the challenge is that every business has their own process and every business uses a different marketing system, generally. And so a lot of this work is put together as a framework from us to you, and then you can then use all of our awesome platform services to automate these activities. And so we can't say, here is the #1 consent process that you're going to use, because that consent process won't work for everyone. But we can give you the framework for getting started with that, and then taking that then and building that within your organization. So hopefully that's a little impromptu onto that topic. And hopefully that's beneficial, because there is a lot that we have out there that a lot of people don't know about. And I think will start to really come to light in the next couple of years as privacy regulations hopefully tighten up in the United States.
Thank you. I certainly like, that is amazing information. And thank you for going into that. My 2 kids are apparently very interested in this. But, yeah. No,
who doesn't love privacy?
So we had a few questions in the chat, Stephan. One was from Jeff Fisher. What's the fastest way to find out everything in preview or beta?
That's a great question. Generally, at the start of every presentation, we will talk about that. I'm not actually aware of a master list that exists, but the Trailblazer community will generally have community groups and groups in the Trailblazer community for releases and for beta products. And so if you were to go one way, I'm not sure that this is definitive, but you can search for the word beta in the Trailblazer community or pilot, and you will see some of those groups. And in the description, there will usually be a contact to that product manager. But if I'm 100% honest with you, the easiest way is to contact your AE, because they'll have a definitive list of betas that you could be nominated for, and they'll be able to vet your status in going into those as well.
Great, thank you. Mitch also asked, what's your favorite upcoming feature for next release?
For next release, this is very forward-looking. I don't know if I could specify something from next release. I can talk about my favorite feature from summer, and that's some community enhancements. So within Lightning Web Components of communities, there are now 2 new modules that you can import into your community Lightning Web Components. And the first of those is importing the base path. And so you can get the URL to that community as an import instead of having to go to Apex or manipulate the URL to get it. And the second of those is is another module for importing the network ID into your Lightning Web Components, because then you have access to that community's ID, so that when you go out to Apex to get something or to hit maybe like the Connect API, you don't have to do a query as well for the network ID. You have it already for you when constructing that call out into Apex.
All right, let me just look through. I think we had a couple more. Mitch also asked for the SSBC Force org shape. Will that ever come out of beta?
That's a great question. I unfortunately don't have an answer for you for that one, but I can, if you shoot me an email, I can track one down, I'm sure.
All right, I didn't see any more questions, but if they are, you can always shoot Stephan an email. I think now we'll move on to our next festivities, which is the trivia game.
Yep. So if everyone is interested in playing trivia, I think there are some really cool prizes tonight. Everyone go ahead and go to this URL in your browsers or in your phones. And our fantastic MC is going to guide us through trivia today.
Please try and do your first and last name. And once you win, then you can also private message me so that we can get you your fun prizes.
I have to give a shout out as well to Philippe, who's one of the developer evangelists. He's built this amazing quiz app that all of us can download and use. It makes great fun for some of your users. I've seen it used really well in training sessions, and it's a great example to show the power of the platform and to show that this is all built on Salesforce and Heroku. And that things like this can be built in and bring really good visibility to the technology to your customers.
I think with the URL, Stephan, people aren't able to join that way.
Okay, let me go ahead and check that out quickly. If you are having any trouble, maybe try opening up an incognito window and going to the URL. We have 22 registered so far.
It looks like Paul dropped the link, the Heroku app link. If you look for that in the chat, you should be able to get that.
Thanks so much, Paul. We'll give people a few more minutes to join.
This is where, if you've attended developer trivia on Trailhead Live, Kevin likes to do it, sing a little jingle. I do not have a great singing voice, and you will not hear me sing today, unfortunately. But if anyone would like to have a go, I'm sure we can get some Jeopardy music going.
All right, we're right at 46 players. Is there anyone else that's trying to join but is unable to join? If you could just drop something in the chat. Nadina will not be singing. I do not have a singing voice. Paul, I can definitely unmute you if you would like to sing. Okay. I think I see one person still joining. All right, we'll give it another minute. Everyone's so excited. I'm really excited.
So the way the game is going to work is everyone is going to see their view of the answers to the questions. You'll have a square for each of the answers. And as we press start, the question will come onto the screen and be as quick as you can to press the correct answer, because the points are calculated based off getting the correct answer as well as the speed in which you know that correct answer.
All right, I think we can get started. I don't see anyone else joining.
Okay, ready to go. So our first question is,
the Salesforce Admins Podcast was originally called what and was started by whom? This is a very tricky one. Oh, easy, you say, Melissa? Okay, okay.
easy.
Good thing that you can't win.
But you know, I'd actually like to listen to all 4 of these podcasts. So if we can get on that, if anyone could get on making these all happen, then I think that'd be brilliant. We can't have enough Salesforce podcasts. Great.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, let's move to the next question.
Okay.
What year was Salesforce founded? This is a real easy one. Hopefully everyone by now has gotten it. Wonderful, wonderful.
Right, quite a few got that one right.
I see Elizabeth's now in the lead.
Yes, it's going to start getting really competitive in a second. All right, the next question.
The 1-1-1 model, pioneered by Mark Benioff and Salesforce.com, is centered around contributing what? Mitch, I see you're scratching your head. This is a real difficult one.
I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mind a t-shirt, a hat, and a keychain, actually.
Right now, I think I could do with a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
great. Everyone got it.
Great.
The 1%.
Cindy's now in the lead.
Nice, nice.
Okay, next question.
Regarding to order of execution, which of the following happens first?
This one's very important. I've seen many people forget this one.
Most people knew it was the validation rule.
Ooh, we're changing again. I have to say this is getting, the leaderboard is really mixing up on this round. Okay, go to the next question.
Which of these certifications are a prerequisite in order to become a certified technical architect? This is a very tricky question. It's a prerequisite.
All of the above is not one of the options. Maybe it should be.
Great.
We go, not a lot of movement that round. Let's go on to the next question.
What is the name of the product that was introduced by Salesforce in June 2017?
I think I see some Googling going on there. I see some hands typing really quickly. Someone's phoning a friend over in the bottom corner there.
Well, some people went off camera.
Ooh, Paul coming from behind.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay.
Great, on to the next question.
What Salesforce product provides you with essential solutions designed to help businesses reopen the workplace as quickly as possible? This was definitely mentioned in the presentation, just to help.
That was planned, 100%.
Zach, don't be throwing out fake answers. No one listened to Zach.
There we go.
Wonderful.
I think I can guess who that one wrong was. All right, next question. We're nearing the end here. It's going to be a really close call.
Which of these Salesforce community-focused groups / nonprofits were created in Salesforce ATX? For all the Austin people, this should be a breeze. Wonderful. It definitely was nervous. Glad everyone was paying attention.
Great. One more question.
Not including Sassy or Chatty, who was the first Salesforce Trailhead character?
For anyone looking for Chatty, Chatty is now a friend of the forest and has been retired. So we've not seen Chatty at a conference for a few years now. Well, I do have a stuffed one somewhere in a box. As I'm unpacking, I'll have to find it. Great. Paul still in the lead, it looks like. Mitch following very closely behind.
What is the new web-based IDE by Salesforce that is powered by Visual Studio Code Spaces? This was also in the presentation. Lots of chatter in the chat.
Okay. Great.
Wonderful.
I think that was maybe there's one more question coming up at the end of that. take a look now. That's game over. So congratulations.
Wonderful. And all four of you, so Paul, Mitch, Ryan, and Pearl, receive a Salesforce certification voucher. It's good for a $200 voucher or $400.
Ooh. I don't know, which certifications do we think we're going to be going for? I know we've all got one we've got our eyes on at the moment, I'm sure.
For the winners who just won, if you can send me a private message with your email address, first name and last name, so that we can get those to you. We'll now turn it over to Chris to do the other winners.
Yes, thank you, Nadina, and congratulations to the trivia winners. We have 3 more certifications to give away. And earlier in the week, we asked you to post something on social media indicating that you were attending tonight. And we selected one person who posted on Twitter, and that person is Laura Lee. So if you would not mind, Laura, sending Nadina a private message with your email address, we can get you that certification. And lastly, we have 2 more certifications to give away just for showing up tonight. How easy is that? And those 2 certifications are going to, hopefully you're still here. First, Julie Menard. Thought I saw Julie. If you are here, please send Nadina your email address. And second is, and I hope I pronounced this correctly, Statia Stanford, S-T-A-T-I-A Stanford. You are our second winner. Congratulations to both of you. Again, please send Nadina a message with your email address. Thank you so much. And let's see, who am I turning it over to? Zach, is it you or Nadina?
To Zach.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm not muted. I was like, shoot, how do I unmute myself? I wanted to thank everyone for spending their evening with us. We are still going to be hanging around. We are going to kick everyone off by 8 p.m., but we understand that was a lot of content, and you might want to socialize with your peers. So we do have this Zoom until 8 p.m. That is a hard stop just to respect everyone's time, because we've learned a lot this evening, and I'm sure everyone has other responsibilities to attend to, but you should all be able to unmute yourselves and talk.
Thank you, Zach.
Woohoo.
And congrats to Julie and Stacia. I hope you
Thanks.
both are still on. I would love to see you guys' faces, the ones that won the admin certifications, just to know that you guys are still around. But
I'm Stacia.
hi.
Stacia.
Oh, that's so fun.
First timer tonight.
Have a certification in mind that you're planning to get?
No, I'm actually just this is my first time here. I do a lot of admin work at my company, but I'm not the admin. I'm actually a QA manager. So just by default of having to test everything we're building on the Salesforce platform, I'm in the back end a lot. So I am looking to maybe do some Apex stuff and get more into development, but I'm mostly just a tester. So this is kind of fabulous for a first time joining. So
Yeah,
lots of knowledge to learn from.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you joined tonight. I know all the other hosts and user group leaders are also super happy that you joined and are the winner of one of the certifications. I hope you come back to a user group after you get one and maybe let us know how it went.
No, I definitely want to keep attending. It's been nice tonight.
That's great.
I'm Julie.
Oh, Julie, I see you. Oh, yeah, there you are. Okay.
Hey there.
Yeah. Do you have a certification that you're going to get?
I'm not quite sure. We're in the middle of a very large revamp of our CPQ, so maybe CPQ specialist or something, but I just sat for my first admin last month. So I had never sat for anything before. I've used it for years, but So I got my first certification last month. So I'm still figuring out priority of what to chase. So.
Well, CPQ is hot. So
it is trial by fire. I don't know if you know Sam Bragg in Houston, but Rose Tree is who we're working with, the consulting firm. And they've been so invaluable. I mean, just amazing, leading us through. We have had CPQ, and basically the way it was set up, we just need to kind of start over. And I just joined the org like 6 months ago. So it's been interesting as we've identified, hey, we really need to redo this. So it was a good experience.
That's wonderful. And again, same as Stacia, if you go for especially a specialized certification like CPQ, I think it would be great to come back to the user group, because these are certifications that are so specific that most companies rely on consultants for these services, and to have the expertise, bring it in-house, mix it in with your admin skills, become a greater force. Like, tell us if you go that path. No pressure, but if you do, go back and report to us and see how it goes, because there are multiple avenues on this front at the moment, and I think it would be good to hear from the community on what the different options are for companies, for individuals that are pursuing these specialized paths.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that our use case of CPQ and what we sell actually is very specialized. So we're exercising all the functionality of CPQ with guided selling and things like that. So we'll probably be exploring many areas that maybe not all companies explore when they adopt CPQ in general. So hopefully we'll see. I'll definitely stay in touch. I have a colleague that I work with the CPQ revamp that I think he's interested in also pursuing some of the certifications. So it'll be good.
Well, as a call out to my co-leaders and the community leaders, I think maybe in a couple of months, let's touch base with Stacia and Julie just to get a reconnection on that.
Yeah.
Either, I don't know what your plans are for your date that you're trying to hit, but a few months out, like truly get a read in on that.
Sure.
And see.
Drop a minute for a meeting, and then I joined back in, but it's always great to see everybody coming together. I love how the product knowledge, and it sounds like it was, I've been to several. I was in Prague for a second. I was in Latin America, but it sounds like, and maybe because I keep going to developer ones, but it sounds like Code Builder was the big topic for many of the global gatherings. And what other ones? But Code Builder is what jumps out to me that people are really kind of talking about. Yeah, but it's great. Glad I can make it.
We were glad that you were able to make it. And what about you, Sophia? Did you have a fun Austin themed meeting? I understand you want a Y'all Force shirt. Can't hear you.
Oh, we can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you. That was probably loud.
It appears that you're unmuted, but I'm not sure. I know. Sad face, yes.
Real sadness. Not sure what's going on.
I know. Technology issues are the norm of the day with Zoom and Blue Jeans. Sometimes.
She typed it in the chat. She said,
Okay.
I do have a Y'all First shirt and had so much fun. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. I think there were a couple of other questions that have popped up in the chat. We've allowed everyone to unmute, so feel free to hop on the microphone. But I think one of the questions was, does my voucher cover the CTA exam? No. I can tell you that for sure it does not cover the CTA exam. It does cover certain $400 level exams. We'll send you, or one of us in the group leaders group will send you an email about the exact exams it covers. We'll get in touch.
Yeah, I think I'll just have to win a lot more rounds of trivia and then maybe save up those vouchers. or place second in trivia. This is my second time placing second in a row.
Sorry about that. It's my first time winning.
Hey, it's a great first time to win. That's an expensive voucher.
So I just want to ask, and I know the technical difficulties are preventing some from answering, but Leah, like, where are you joining from? Like, this is an Austin user group, but where are you? Are you joining from San Francisco? Like, what part of the world are you joining from?
I'm in the East Bay, in California, Northern California, right outside of San Francisco.
Oh, nice.
And Sophia's East Bay as well.
As well, okay.
Northern
Well, we
California.
do so much appreciate you both for joining in. It's such an honor to have you join our user group, and it's such an active user group here, and especially after we've had to adjust to all the new normals, it's really nice to have people pop in from a virtual standpoint, listen in, add context. There's a beauty to this pandemic that probably wouldn't have been exposed otherwise. So thank you.
Definitely a silver lining, and it's a silver lining for me to be able to go to all the different user groups and just get the pulse of the community and see what folks are talking about, and just be able to like slide in and listen and not have to present or talk. It's always nice. So just be a part of the crowd.
We've been lucky to have people, whether from Salesforce or just other Salesforce users from around the country now and the world, join in to these, our meetings, and it's great. Like, and one thing I wanted to mention is I see Paul McCollum mentioned, I don't know if you're a co-leader of the Dallas developer group or not, but looking for more people to join in, and you can come to ours, but we can also go to yours now. Like, we can.
I'd love that. I want my group to be like yours. Well, maybe just a little better. But I've got a long way to go to get it up to this level. So I'm re-inspired. So I just took over like 2 months ago. So shared up 4 co-leaders.
Yeah, no, it's it's great if you just having someone invested in trying to build the community is a great first step. And you pull one person at a time until you build what we have here with a lot of people just invested in this community. So and every user group, like we're the developer user group, but we accept, we don't just accept, but we encourage people who are not developers to come to the developer user group. And I think that's another great thing about the Austin developer, and I think most of them, but definitely our user group does that. So the fact that we have the admin group, I know all these people from the admin group because I go to the admin group, and then half the people who are in the admin group come to the developer group also, right? So we're not just, and the same with like the women in tech group and the nonprofit user group. Any of the user groups in Austin, like we all try to like come to each other's things as leaders and as individuals, and I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to bring up really quickly, we have done this a lot, but I think it's been a month or two since we've done it. But I want to ask, is there anyone hiring here, or is there anyone looking for a job and they would like to pitch themselves or pitch the job they are hiring for?